I think that's really the key to sustainability, is having that renewable resource that you can recreate on, that you can derive value from timber and wood products, and that's having a habitat that's beneficial to wildlife, and all those uses of a forest that come into play.
My name is Jeff Olson. I am in charge of the forestry operations for the State Forest. We're on the Northern Highland American Legion State Forest. It was the first state forest in Wisconsin, and the first state foresters were hired in 1911 to serve at Trout Lake in this area. The state forest was created to maintain and protect the headwaters area of the state. The state forest has a lot of water bodies. In fact, they have counted 930 water bodies on the state forest. So it's a very scenic area, and the water features are predominant in this area. The forest is a sustainably managed property, and that means we balance the ecological, the nature part of the forest, with the social aspects of the forest, which are the people, as well as the economic or productive part of the forest too. So sustainability is a balancing of those three, and the state forest is managed that way. There'll be areas that are focused on recreation. In fact, we have 18 campgrounds within the property boundaries, and those areas are intensive recreation. Forest management is always modified by recreation considerations. Some areas would have buffers around them, or would be cut in a very light way in a season where people aren't out on the landscape. But the recreational uses of the state forest are many. In fact, there hardly is a stand on the state forest that doesn't have someone walking their dog, hunting in the fall, berry picking, riding their bikes, driving by, viewing it from a river or a lake. There's a lot of recreation that's viewed from the public side of things. And forest management has those considerations built in, and we do consider each stand and how recreation is affecting that stand and what modifications would be needed, so that we're accounting for and accommodating those uses.
Wildlife has been a really kind of exciting component to owning this property. One day, about 10 years ago, I was working up in the upper wood shop. There was good heavy rains, enough rains where there was standing water out there in the yard, and there was 13 coyotes playing out there in the water right below me, right outside those windows. So things like that are, let's say, a memorable treat. Or the morning that I woke up at 5 in the morning, and about this time of year again, and I looked out on our yard, and there was a black bear rolling around on his back, just a few feet from the house. I think wildlife has really been a really exciting component to practicing sustainable forestry and living and spending time in the woods.
The aspen the best, and they also like the thicker balsam cover along the trails and the roads. So we try to maintain that aspen by clear cutting it when it's due for harvest. And we've actually got a stand of aspen not too far down the road that was cut in 2005, so it's coming up on 10 years old. But my kids are 6 and 4, and by the time they're my age, that stand will be ready to be harvested again. So that's kind of, I guess, speaks back to the sustainability and sustainable forest management. Hopefully when the kids are my age, they'll be managing that timber sale. So.
Part of the management strategy that we have is to promote diversity, which means along with diversity, you're improving your species diversity of animals, and birds and other animals or other entities that use the forest, critters. But maintaining different ages of aspen does promote ruffed grouse and other songbirds that use aspen stands at different ages. So yeah, it's important to manage our forest, to maintain the aspen on the forest, to do it in such a way that you have different age classes at all times, so the different animals can use it at different times for their needs. So yeah, in a way, we're tasked with keeping certain percentages of all the tree species on the forest, and by doing that, maintaining that the differences in the tree species on the forest, you are promoting wildlife.
Use local wood for global good. That means that before you consider bringing wood in from an out-of-way place and invoke all the transportation expenses and all the environmental harm that could come from the long transportation and so on, that you consider the local resource and use it to the best of its potential.
In addition to the forest products going, as you saw, out on a truck into a mill, there's also other things that the forest provides for society. In this sale, there was a lot of birch bark trees out here, and we make available these areas on a permit for folks who want to peel birch bark for crafts. The tribe is very interested, the Lac du Flambeau tribe is very interested in coming out and using the birch bark for their cultural practices, making different Native American products that they have woven into their culture.
Red pine can be managed for different forest products, but one in particular we've got marked now is for telephone or utility poles. So that's kind of an interesting use of red pine, and they're often used quite a bit for cabin logs as well. Wisconsin does have a number of log cabin producers. A lot of times they'll come out and take a look in the field of the trees standing and see which ones might be desirable cabin logs. They typically have to be straight logs without any sweeps or crooks. So it's really important to have the right stocking when you're growing pine, red pine and white pine, in order to get the trees to grow straight. Christmas tree farms are very labor intensive. We plant the seedlings every year and plant a variety of different species, from white pine, balsam fir, Fraser fir. Balsam and Fraser tend to be the more popular Christmas trees right now. But usually it takes about 7 to 12 years for a tree to reach a size where it's about 7 feet or so, 6 or 7 feet, where it makes a really good Christmas tree. But the trees are fertilized every year, they're sheared, and then harvest takes place usually starting around the end of October, and it's always a busy season right after Thanksgiving and right through to Christmas, when we are working on our retail lots in Florida, Mississippi, and Louisiana. When the days start getting warmer and the nights are still cold, that's when syrup production's at its best. So we tap about 120 trees around here, and usually end up with about 30 gallons. If it's a good year, normally we might be around 20 or so, and would tap the trees. Basically, it's more of a hobby, so we do kind of the old-fashioned way with the metal buckets and the caps on the buckets and the metal taps, and and collect by hand, but then pump it into the holding tank, and then start boiling it down for syrup. Typically, you've got to boil 40 gallons of sap to get 1 gallon of syrup. So we spend a lot of time around the fire.
It's important for people to understand the science and the societal part and the environment that's out here. And I think it really gives them a much more of a deeper appreciation from the outdoors. And when they see things like today's logging job that we're in, or they see a forest practice or a recreational trail being built, they understand that it's to get people into the outdoors, to have that experience in working with natural processes and try to keep things as natural and growing as possible. It's a balance to ecology. It's very important.
We're leaving more things for wildlife, which is all good. We're more recreation minded, sensitive to areas, not cutting up the lake shores, and a lot of things like that make the job appear better to the public, and it is better. that we're doing that kind of stuff, because it's all our forest, and it's not just a logging forest, but it's everybody's piece of land.